Now we're going to look at how jQuery can help automate some of this. So here is an SVG plugin. There are lots of SVG plugins out there, but they're all different in implementation, but the concepts underneath are the same. So for this one, what we need to take note of is how this one is different. Is it will only animate the path element inside of the SVG parent. So if it doesn't have the path element, this plugin is of no use. So I like to use this one because it's pretty lightweight, but it has a little bit more coding to activate it, but nothing that we can't pick up. So let's look at some examples here. So here we are have a vector illustration with some paths that are being animated, and we can even draw an animation path over as a mask, and because it's a path, it'll also be animated. So we're just simply revealing the image underneath. So there's the plugin. Then I went ahead and downloaded the plugin and added it to CodePen. And inside of the example is a link to the plugin itself. So here is the code for the jQuery plugin. Again, we don't need to ever modify the plugin code. So we have the plugin added to the pen, and now we're ready to use it. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure that we have the correct elements. So if I go back to the same file that we're using before, this responsive SVG for Google here, and we grab just the SVG code, you'll notice something, that it's using the text and the line element inside of the SVG parent, but the plugin says you have to use, for this plugin to work, we need the path element inside of the SVG parent. So if I copy and paste this all in and we try to use the plugin, like any good plugin, it has good documentation, this is never going to run. It's never going to run. So even if we copy out the code, so here we'll grab the same code, we'll just copy it out as is, and I'll explain it in a little bit here. Right. None of the paths are going to be animated or drawn. And you'll see here if I highlight the text path itself. Okay, so we're using the text element, not the path element. So there's an easy way to do that. So inside of Illustrator, here we have some text with a fill and a stroke on it. And what we want to do is take this and convert it to outlines, or create outlines. And this is going to vary depending on your version of Illustrator. Go Illustrator. And then we're going to follow the exact same methods. So File, Save As. Inside of the Save menu, we're going to follow our same process. Select an SVG, hit Save. And then we want the SVG code, checking for 1.1, either style attributes or style elements, whatever your preferred method is. And notice here it says use text path for text element. Well, we can actually uncheck that, because we're going to use the path element, because we're no longer using the text element, because we've converted it to outlines. They're all going to be path elements, and in this case we want this one to be responsive. And then we're going to look at SVG code, and there we go. Okay, so I'm going to copy this in, paste it into here, and now we can see the lines being animated. So let's go ahead and take a look at the difference if we hadn't converted it to outlines. So I'm going to go back and highlight this again, and it's no longer converted to outlines. And I'm going to follow that same method, File, Save As. If we do the exact same thing, notice the difference here. Instead of using the path element, look what it's doing instead. It's using the text element, which the plugin doesn't know what to do with. So for this plugin to work, make sure that you have the path element turned on. So to recap, we've assured that the plugin, the Draw SVG plugin, has path elements to modify. So to use the plugin, the code is a little bit different than what we've done, but it's nothing that we can't pick up. So the first thing we want to do is initialize the plugin, or get it ready to run. So load the plugin, get everything ready, get everything stored, get all the options set up, then run the plugin. So that's the initialization part. So first, to use the plugin, we're going to initialize it, and then we're going to run it. And so to store it, initialize or store it for use, we're going to need to use this JavaScript keyword of var, and var says like create this empty container, and then you're going to need to give this container a name. So in this case we can call it, I don't know, Google. Okay, we'll call it Google, and then we're going to assign something to this container called Google. In this case it's the SVG, so jQuery wake up, grab this thing called SVG, and then what you want to do is run this plugin called draw SVG, and all of that gets stored here in this container called Google. And so now what we can do is say, well, we have this thing, this variable called Google, okay, and then we want to run it. In this case the action that we're going to run is draw SVG, and then notice nothing happens until we come in here and say actually run the animation. Okay, and this is all from the plugin. So the option here of drawing SVG is actually required for this to run, because it doesn't want it to run automatically. It wants you to say, I want this animation to run. And so once this is all set up, you can go into the initialization where it's set up and give it some options. And so all the good stuff happens inside of the curly brace. And so there's our familiar right paren, right curly, right parentheses. And all of our options are right here under the documentation, and so we can make it run a different direction with reverse, and that default is false, so if we change this to true it should draw the other direction. And so options are key value pairs separated by a colon. So we're going to say reverse, colon, true, and watch the animation draw in the other direction. And we can come in here and we can also say maybe there's going to be a stagger or a delay. And so we're going to select stagger, and we separate each one of these options, these key value pairs, the key being on the left and the value being on the right, with a comma. And so now we're going to run stagger with an option of, let's say 200 would be in milliseconds. So if we do 1000, it'd be 1 second. So wait 1 second and then draw. Right, so all the animations are staggered, and that's a nice effect. And watch what happens if I take it away. Right, everything is going to be drawn at once. So there's stagger, and the other one is that might be useful is duration. And again, each key value pair is separated by a comma, and this again is in milliseconds. So maybe in 5,000 milliseconds or 5 seconds, have the whole staggered animation run in reverse. Okay. So here is where we set up everything to run, and down here is where we actually run it.